Charlie Munger, known by many as Warren Buffett's sidekick. But how Charlie Munger made his money. And what was the drive that made him eventually join Buffett and build one of the greatest business empire in history, Berkshire Hathaway. In today's short documentary, we are going to take a look into the life journey of Charlie Munger. Charles Thomas Munger was born in the city of Omaha, Nebraska, on January 1, 1924. Toody, his mother, was born into a wealthy intellectual family and instilled in her son a great appetite for reading and study. His father, Al Munger, was the son of Judge T.C. Munger, a self-educated man who climbed from poverty to become a federal judge. The family ideals of hard work and self-discipline were instilled in Charlie as a child. Though he briefly worked at Buffett Son, Warren Buffett's grandfather's grocery store, he didn't meet Warren, who is 5 years younger, until years later. In 1941, Charlie moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to attend the University of Michigan, and in 1943, he dropped out to join the Army Air Corps. He was sent to Caltech to learn how to be a weatherman before being dispatched to Alaska. Despite the fact that he never saw action, his training changed his life in another way. He met and married Nancy Huggins, his sister's roommate at Scripps College, during it. The young couple moved to Boston, so Charlie could attend Harvard Law School. Despite having no undergraduate degree, Charlie graduated with flying colors. In 1949, Charlie, Nancy, and their son and 2 daughters moved to California, where he joined the law firm Wright and Garrett, later renamed into Music, Peeler, and Garrett. In 1953, the Mungers divorced. The children lived with their mother, but remained close to their father. Around this time, Charlie invested in a business for the first time, buying part of a troubled transformer company owned by one of his legal clients. Charlie was able to turn the company around and sell it for a profit, making a good return. But, during this period, a big tragedy struck. Munger's 9-year-old son, Teddy, had leukemia and died in 1955. In 1956, Charlie married Nancy Borthwick. Friends joke that Charlie wouldn't be able to remember her name if it wasn't the same as his first wife's. Charlie took her 2 sons from a previous marriage into his family. They soon had 4 more children. Charlie spent much of his children's early lives at the office, but family has remained very important to him. In 1959, Charlie's father passed away. He met Warren Buffett through his acquaintances when he returned to Omaha to support his family. He and Buffett clicked right away. After returning to California, Charlie and Buffett talked for hours on the phone about potential investments. Charlie gradually ascended to the position of business partner and investment counselor previously held by Benjamin Graham, Buffett's mentor and the father of value investing. Later, as opportunity arrives, Charlie entered a real estate business by partnering with one of his clients in 1961. He started building apartments that were coming into trend in Southern California as the population there started to bloom. In 1962, he founded a new law firm, Munger, Talls, with some of his sharpest colleagues from his old firm. That year, he and client Jack Wheeler started their investment partnership, Wheeler, Munger and Company. Charlie's first real estate development proved immensely profitable when he sold it in 1967, and he continued to invest in similar projects with various partners, including Otis, Booth and Al Marshall. Success enabled him to indulge in his passion for architecture, as well as to hone his business skills by spotting real estate trends and introducing new ideas to sell his projects. Many of Munger's business associates eventually became very successful. Rod Hills, a Munger, Talls founding partner, later became chairman of the SCC. Hills' wife, Carla Anderson Hills, served in the cabinets of both Gerald Ford and George H.W. Bush. Other top lawyers in the firm included Chuck Rickershauser, Ron Olson and Robert Denham. One of the firm's early clients was Warren Buffett, along with the companies that later became Berkshire Hathaway. Though Munger stopped practicing law in 1965, his imprint was deep. The firm's reputation as an intellectual powerhouse is part of Charlie's legacy, as is its democratic compensation structure, under which salaries are determined by open ballot. Wheeler, Munger and Company was a hedge fund that invested in many of the same firms and securities as the Buffett partnership. Charlie developed it mainly as a result of Buffett's encouragement. Rick Guerin began his investment career by both mimicking and conducting business with Charlie. Al Marshall joined the firm and eventually took over for Wheeler. Including the disastrous results of the 1973 to 1974 stock market crash, Wheeler, Munger averaged a 24.3% annual return from 1962 to 1975, easily outperforming the Dow Jones Industrial Average's 6.4% annual return. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Munger, Guerin and Buffett gradually acquired a controlling interest in blue-chip stamps.
We receive our big load at 3 a.m. on Wednesday morning. I'm usually here by 7 o'clock. I'm Jerry Speck. I've been in the grocery business for 22 years. You may think my job is keeping this store. Actually, the most important thing of all is keeping customers. My customers don't want vegetables. They want fresh vegetables, and we buy them by the fieldful. Fresh fruit, too. There are thousands of items. Anyone can sell you meat, but it's getting the right grade, making sure it's trimmed right. These are the things that count and keep customers coming back. Things like friendliness and neatness count, too. In fact, everything's important in keeping my customers happy. That's why we give S&H green stamps. Not just any stamp, S&H green stamps. Like everything else we get for our customers, we picked the best stamp. Our volume went up when we started to give them. S&H green stamps fits into the way we do business, giving our customers the most for their money. That's why so many women keep coming back here. Men, too. Most men who shop will say, "Don't let me forget my S&H green stamps. My wife will shoot me if I go home without them." My customers know how much value they get when they redeem their S&H green stamps. That's why so many of the best merchants here in Los Angeles give S&H green stamps.
This small company issued trading stamps, which merchants distributed. Customers collected and redeemed the stamps for merchandise. The investors saw untapped potential in the company's float account, the difference between stamps issued and stamps redeemed. Using this pool of capital, Blue Chip's controlling investors acquired several other companies. Wesco Financial. At first, Blue Chip bought part of the company, but it owned 80% by 1974. The acquisition led to an SEC lawsuit alleging that Blue Chip manipulated Wesco's stock to fight off another merger. The suit was settled, and Berkshire Hathaway's dense tangle of ownership interests was subsequently simplified, with Blue Chip becoming a wholly owned subsidiary. Munger was named Berkshire's vice chairman, his first formal position with the company.
See's was earning 13 million. So in 72, when they bought it, it was making 2 million. In 84, 12 years later, it was making 13 million. The book value had gone from 8 million to 20 million, but their earnings have gone up significantly more than that.
In 1972 for $25 million, a premium of 3 times the firm's book value. At first Buffett was reluctant to pay more than book value because he was schooled in value investing, which teaches investors to find stocks trading at a discount to book value. But Munger helped him recognize the soundness of See's business. The new manager solidified the firm's competitive advantages and ran the company profitably for years to come.
Channel 7 Buffalo.
It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
This is Eyewitness News Nightcast. Now, with Western New York's #1 newscast, here with Mary McCombs is Irv Weinstein.
The Buffalo Evening News. In 1977, Blue Chip bought this Buffalo newspaper. Charlie called on his legal skill when a competitor brought an antitrust suit against the paper. The competitor folded in 1982, but even without competition, the paper struggled during a recession. Charlie's personal fondness for newspapers led him to stick with it, and now it is among the most profitable newspapers in the U.S. Charlie experienced some difficult personal problems in 1977. His mother passed away, and a bungled cataract operation left him blind in one eye. He did not let it stop him. Berkshire Hathaway acquired companies rapidly in the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s, having learned from Seas that some companies were worth a premium price. Their investments include Geico Nebraska Furniture Mart, Borsheim's, which was a jeweler, ABC, Gillette, US Air, Safeco Corporation, Champion International and Coca-Cola. In the 1990s, Berkshire's growing reputation allowed it to make more deals on preferred terms, concentrating on the insurance industry. The $22 billion buyout of General Reinsurance gave Berkshire Hathaway the highest net worth of any U.S. company, and solidified its position as an insurance giant. Berkshire pays officers and directors relatively low salaries and keeps its overhead to a bare minimum. Buffett's private jet is named the Indefensible in response to Munger's jokes. The management philosophy relies on a few simple ideas: recognize value, closely scrutinize deals, face trouble head-on, rather than complicated, mysterious growth formulas. Over time, the firm and its management have developed what can only be called a cult following. Charlie's business integrity stands out in two examples: his battle with the savings and loan industry in the 1980s, and his role in the turnaround of Salomon Brothers in 1991. As Wesco Financial's chairman, Charlie predicted the S&L crisis of the late 1980s. As early as 1983, he warned that government deregulation of S&L lending powers could lead to increasingly unsustainable loan practices. Wesco gradually moved out of the S&L business and recreated itself as a holding company. Munger invested in Salomon Brothers and the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, Freddie Mac. Hence, Wesco was not hit very hard when S&Ls began to fail, prompting a massive government bailout. Charlie was outraged by the lobbying practices of the U.S. League of Savings Institutions, the S&L trade group. The lobbyists, he charged, wanted to preserve unsound regulations and resist accountability for the industry's problems, at a huge cost to taxpayers, investors and public faith in savings institutions. He took Wesco out of the league in 1989, and gave up its S&L charter in 1992, all while calling publicly for strong governmental reforms. The league ultimately collapsed, confirming Charlie's predictions. In August 1991, Buffett, both members of Salomon Brothers' board of directors, discovered that a trader at that firm made illegal bids for U.S. Treasury securities. To make matters worse, the company's top executives, John Meriwether and John Gutfreund, had known of the violation for 4 months, but it withheld information from the board. Charlie Munger pressed for full disclosure and the resignations of the officials who had known of the illegal trades. Grasping the legal implications, he brought in top lawyers, such as his old partners Denham and Olson. Due in part to Munger's tireless work, the case damaged Salomon, but did not break it. The firm was fined $290 million, but no criminal charges were filed. Denham eventually became CEO, turned the firm around and sold it to Travelers Group Incorporated for $9 billion in 1997. Another fascinating story also takes place where a group of unhappy Salomon employees left to form a hedge fund called Long-Term Capital Management, LCTM. Due to flawed real estate investments and an unsound leverage, the fund came perilously close to collapsing and causing serious damage to the U.S. economy. Although Buffett offered to bail out the fund, LTCM rejected the deal, and was afterward rescued under government pressure by a bank consortium. Munger is a firm believer in donating money to charitable causes. Despite the fact that he is a Republican who leans towards social conservatism, he has been a firm supporter of abortion rights, which has had far-reaching implications. In 1969, he persuaded Munger, Tulls to represent Dr. Leon Belus, who had been convicted of recommending a lady to an abortionist. He persuaded a number of top lawyers to sign a friend of the court brief, and the doctor was acquitted, resulting in the state's anti-abortion law being overturned. This case served as a foundation for the Roe v. Wade's decision 3 years later. Charlie eventually became a trustee and chief financial officer of Planned Parenthood's Los Angeles, and his opinions have not changed. Charlie also directly champions the cause of healthcare. A friend asked him to join the board of the non-profit Good Samaritan Hospital, and he soon became chairman. He treated its short-sightedness and mismanagement, just as he would have treated corporate corruption. He fought it. Though some doctors left, Munger recruited many more. Good Sam, as it is fondly known, has grown into a well-respected hospital that ranked among the best in the country in a 1998 U.S. News & World Report study. The transition was long and difficult, but Munger believes it was worth it. Charlie was a millionaire by 1970, but he continued to reinvest his money as each deal paid off. When Berkshire Hathaway reorganized in the early 1980s, Munger owned 2% of its stock, for which he had paid approximately $40 per share. Today each share is worth more than $60,000. Although he owns several homes across the US, he likes to keep his expenses minimal and refuses to conform to standard business practices, like accepting exorbitant director fees that cost shareholders money. It is fair to say that he got his wealth the old-fashioned way. He earned it. With this, I hope all of you know the reason why Charlie Munger is well respected, even though his net worth is way below Warren Buffett's $100 billion fortune. Thank you for watching until the end. Please like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. And with that, Business Wisdom, signing out.